Follow my story all the way to the end and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to know where you are as you hear this, because something tells me you might recognize a little piece of this story in your own life. The details matter here. They always do. And the devil, as they say, is in every single one of them. I want to start by asking you something. When did you first know? When did you first feel it? That quiet, creeping sense that something had shifted, that the people you'd given everything to had quietly, almost imperceptibly, stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as a resource. Was it a single moment, clean and sharp like a cut? Or was it a slow leak? 100 small things you explained away, forgave, forgot, until one day the bucket was empty, and you finally looked down and wondered where all the water had gone. For me, I can tell you exactly when I knew. But I need to go back a little first, because without the beginning, the ending doesn't make sense. My name isn't important. What matters is that I'm 67 years old, I live in a 2-bedroom house in Asheville, North Carolina, and for the last 4 years I have quietly, steadily, and, I'll be honest with you, somewhat foolishly bankrolled a lifestyle for my son and his wife that most families in this country couldn't dream of affording. I'm not saying that to boast. I'm saying it so you understand what was at stake when everything fell apart. My husband passed away 11 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from diagnosis to gone. No time to breathe, no time to prepare. Just a phone call and then a man and then a memory. He left me well provided for. 40 years in commercial real estate had been good to him, and by extension good to us. And after the grief softened into something I could carry without collapsing, I found myself at 56 with a paid-off house, a healthy portfolio, and more freedom than I knew what to do with. My son, I'll call him my son because that's what he is, whatever else he's become, was 31 when his father died. He and his wife had been married 2 years. They were living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio, and he had just started a job in sales that he hated but was too proud to quit. In those early grief years, I leaned on that boy like a crutch. He would drive down on weekends and sit with me on the porch, and we'd talk about his father until the fireflies came out. His wife was sweet then, or seemed it. She called me every Sunday. She sent me birthday cards with handwritten notes. I loved her like she was mine. So when they came to me 2 years after the funeral and said they wanted to buy a house, wanted to start a family, wanted to build something real, and would I be willing to help with a down payment, I said yes before they finished the sentence. $60,000. That was the down payment on a 4-bedroom colonial in Dublin, Ohio, a suburb with good schools and manicured lawns and neighbors who wave from their driveways. $60,000 that I wired without hesitation, without a contract, without a single conversation about repayment. Because what kind of mother asks her grieving son to sign a promissory note? The kind of mother who would have been smarter than me. That's what kind. After that, the asks came gradually. Never dramatic, never demanding, at first. My son's sales job fell apart during a company restructuring. Could I help with their mortgage for a few months while he got back on his feet? Of course. His wife wanted to go back to school for her interior design certification. The program was expensive. Could I help? I could. Did I? I did. There were car payments. His wife's SUV needed replacing, and the model she wanted was outside what they could swing on one income. There were vacations that turned into family necessities. Mom, we really need this. We've been so stressed. There were home renovations, a kitchen remodel, a finished basement, new hardwood floors throughout the main level because the carpet was giving their daughter allergies. I have a granddaughter. She's 7 now. Bright red hair, gap-toothed smile, the kind of laugh that makes you forget everything that's wrong with the world. She is, without question, the greatest gift that has come from any of this. Over 4 years, I calculated it recently. I gave my son and his wife somewhere in the neighborhood of $620,000. Direct transfers, paid invoices, credit card bills I covered, just this once that became a recurring arrangement. A new roof on the colonial that my son said they simply couldn't afford after his wife's business venture. She had tried to start a staging company. Didn't pan out. I also paid for that staging company, by the way. The equipment, the storage unit, the website, the logo designer, the social media consultant. $620,000. I want you to sit with that number for a moment, because I need you to understand that I wasn't oblivious. I wasn't a woman who didn't read statements or track accounts. I'm sharp. I was an office manager for 22 years. I know how to read a spreadsheet. I knew how much I was giving. What I told myself, what I genuinely believed for longer than I should have, was that I was investing in my family, that this was what the money was for, that my husband would have wanted this. What I failed to understand was that you cannot buy your place in someone's life. You can only rent it, and when you stop paying, the lease runs out. I should have seen the signs earlier. I can name them now, the way you name constellations once someone's pointed them out. Obvious in retrospect, invisible in real time. The first sign, my granddaughter's birthday party. She turned 6, and there was a big celebration at one of those indoor play places. 30 kids, a custom cake, a balloon artist, a photo booth. I paid for all of it. My son thanked me in a group text that also included his college friends. I wasn't in any of the photos that were posted online, not a single one. The second sign, Christmas 2 years ago. I drove up to Columbus 5.5 hours, loaded down with gifts. I arrived on Christmas Eve and discovered they had already opened presents that morning because the kids had a hard time waiting. My granddaughter was thrilled with her new bike and couldn't really focus on the gifts I'd brought. My son said, "You should have just come Christmas morning, Mom." I had told him my plan 3 weeks earlier. The third sign, and this one I should have stopped at. I should have planted my feet right here and refused to move another inch, was my own birthday last March. I turned 67. I told both my son and his wife about 2 months in advance that I wanted to do something together. Nothing grand, I said dinner. Somewhere nice. Just us. My granddaughter, my son, his wife, and me. I offered to drive to Columbus. I said I just wanted to be together on the day. The morning of my birthday, I woke up and made myself a cup of coffee and sat at my kitchen table and waited for the phone to ring. I had bought a birthday cake for myself, not because I wanted cake, but because I thought maybe if my granddaughter saw it, if they came over or we FaceTimed, it would be something festive, something cheerful. I had gotten the kind with the cream cheese frosting, the kind my son had loved since he was small, a birthday cake. Cream cheese frosting. For my own birthday. For my son. Let that land for a second. By noon, nothing. By 2 in the afternoon, a text from his wife. "Happy birthday, Isla. Hey, hope you have a wonderful day." That was it. That was the whole message. No call, no plan, no "we're sorry we can't make it," just an emoji and a period. My son didn't reach out until almost 9 o'clock that night. He sent a voice memo, not a call, a voice memo. And in it he said he was sorry he'd missed the day. Things had been crazy. Work was a lot. He'd make it up to me. He didn't make it up to me. 2 weeks later, I transferred $15,000 to cover some dental work his wife needed and a plumbing emergency at the Colonial. I transferred it the same way I always had. Quietly. Without being asked twice. Because that's what I had trained them to expect from me. And then came June. My son texted me on a Tuesday morning. I was at the kitchen table with my second cup of coffee, reading the news on my tablet. The message came in at 8:14 a.m. I remember because I looked at the clock when I heard the notification tone, the way you look at a clock in the middle of the night when something wakes you. I read the message once. Then I set my tablet down. Then I picked it up and read it again. "Mom, Natalie and I have been talking, and we think we need some space from you for a while. We've both been feeling overwhelmed and like there's a lot of pressure around our relationship with you. We'd really appreciate it if you didn't reach out for now. We'll be in touch when we're ready." That was all. I sat with it for a very long time. I'd like to say I cried. I didn't, not right away. I just sat there in my kitchen in Asheville, in the house I'd lived in for 28 years, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold, reading those words over and over and looking for something in them that would make sense of them. "We need space from you." We've been feeling overwhelmed, pressure around our relationship with you. I thought about the $60,000 down payment. I thought about the $620,000. I thought about the birthday cake with cream cheese frosting sitting in my refrigerator, half eaten, 3 months old now in my memory. And then something happened that I hadn't planned on, something I can't entirely explain even now. The grief I expected didn't come. What came instead was clarity, not anger, not panic, just a very still, very quiet, very certain clarity, the kind that arrives sometimes when things finally stop pretending to be other than they are. I finished my coffee. I got dressed. I drove to my bank. I'm not going to tell you that I had a dramatic meeting with a banker in a glass-walled office. What actually happened was much quieter than that. I sat down with my financial advisor, a woman I've worked with for 9 years who has a photograph of her 2 dogs on her desk and always offers me water, and I told her I needed to make some changes to my accounts. I removed my son and his wife as beneficiaries on 2 accounts. I restructured my estate documents with a note to my attorney to follow up with a full review. I canceled the supplemental card on my account that my son's wife had been using for household items for the past 18 months. 18 months. I had not looked closely enough at what those household items were. Then I drove home, sat back down at my kitchen table, and I did not call my son. I did not send a text. I did not reach out to his wife. I did not post anything on social media. I did not tell any mutual family friends. I did what they had asked me to do, which was to give them space. I gave them space. What happened next is where the story changes. It took 4 days, 4 days of complete silence on my end, and on the 5th day, my son called. I let it go to voicemail. His wife called 20 minutes later. I let that go too. Then my son called again. Then there were texts, first careful, then confused, then something that started to approach urgent. On the 6th day, I had 19 missed calls between the 2 of them. On the 7th day, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting them. Columbus is 5.5 hours from Asheville, which means they had gotten up early, or possibly the night before, and driven through the mountains to stand on my porch. I heard the knock and I went to the window first, the way I always do, and I stood there looking at them through the glass. My son was pacing on the porch steps, both hands pushed into his hair. His wife was standing very still with her arms crossed, not angry still, scared still. She looked like a woman who had just realized something important and wasn't sure what to do with the information. I opened the door. I want to be honest about this moment, because it would be easy to make myself the hero of it. Cool, composed, ready with the perfect words. The truth is that when I saw my son's face, I felt the grief I hadn't felt on Tuesday. It moved through me fast, like a wave. This was my child. I had taught him to ride a bike in this driveway. I had sat in the back seat of my husband's car with him between us when we brought him home from the hospital 38 years ago. I stepped back and let them in. We sat in the living room. For a while, no one said very much. My son started to apologize and then stopped and started again. His wife looked at her hands. My son said he hadn't known about the accounts, which I believed, because his wife was the one who managed the money in their household and she was the one not making eye contact. I waited until he finished. Then I said, calmly and carefully, I love you. I have always loved you. And I have been giving you money for 4 years because I love you and because I wanted to help and because I thought that's what a good mother did. But I think what I actually did was teach you that I would keep showing up no matter how I was treated. And I'm not going to do that anymore. My son didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he said, I didn't know how much it was, Mom. I didn't. I never added it up. And I said, I know. That's part of the problem. His wife started to cry. I noticed that the crying started right around the time I mentioned the accounts, and I filed that away without commenting on it. We talked for 3 hours. At some point I made sandwiches because that's what I do when I don't know what else to do. We ate them at the kitchen table. the three of us, and it felt both completely ordinary and completely different from anything that had happened between us in years. I told them that I was not going to disappear. I was not cutting them off, not from my life, not from my granddaughter's life, not from any kind of future inheritance. But I was done being an ATM. I was done being someone who could be pushed aside and texted back into service when the financial situation required it. What I asked for was simple: to be treated like someone whose presence in their lives mattered, not only whose money did. My son looked at me for a long time. He said, "I didn't realize that's what it had become." I believed him. I think that's one of the strangest things about how people take you for granted. They often don't know they're doing it. The behavior just calcifies slowly, over years, until one day it's just the way things are. The person who gives keeps giving. The people who receive keep receiving. Nobody marks the moment it crossed a line. There was a condition, though. I told him I needed 30 days, not of apologies, not of grand gestures. I needed 30 days of what should have been normal the whole time. Calls that weren't about money, visits that weren't transactional, conversations where I wasn't being managed. I told them to take some time and think about whether that was something they actually wanted. They drove back to Columbus that evening. I stood in my doorway and watched the taillights disappear down the street, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Calm. Not empty, not sad, just calm. Like a window that had been painted shut for years had finally been forced open, and now there was air in the room. The 30 days passed. Slowly at first, and then not slowly at all. My son called me on a Tuesday, the same day of the week he'd sent that text, and he talked for 40 minutes about a podcast he'd been listening to, a book he'd picked up, something funny my granddaughter had said in the car. He didn't mention money once. He asked me how I was sleeping. He asked if my knee was still bothering me, the one I'd mentioned offhand 6 weeks ago that I hadn't expected him to remember. He'd remembered. His wife texted me a photo of my granddaughter at soccer practice. Then another one, then a short video of her attempting and failing a cartwheel in the backyard, laughing at herself. I watched it 4 times. We are not fixed. I want to be clear about that because I think stories like this sometimes present a tidy resolution, everything neatly sewn up, and that's not the truth of it. What we are is in process. What we have now is more honest than what we had before, which was a kind of comfortable fiction that worked for everyone until it didn't. I have not reinstated the supplemental credit card. I have told my son directly and his wife that any financial support going forward will be planned, discussed, agreed upon, and written down. Not because I don't trust them, or rather, not only because of that, but because I should have done this from the beginning. I should have been a parent, not a patron. My attorney has drawn up documents placing a portion of my estate in a trust that will be managed by a trustee, not by my son, not by his wife, and structured to pass to my granddaughter in stages, contingent on nothing other than her reaching certain ages. My son will receive something, yes, but it will not arrive in lump sums at will, and it will not arrive as a response to pressure. What I want to leave behind more than money is a lesson, not a punishment. A lesson. Last week, my granddaughter called me on FaceTime from her bedroom and showed me a drawing she'd made at school. It was a house, large and lopsided, with a stick figure standing in front of it. She had labeled the figure Grandma in red crayon. "That's you," she said, very seriously. "You live in a house in the mountains." "I do," I said. "I want to visit," she said. "Come anytime," I said. "My door is always open." And I meant it, both things at once, that she is welcome and that I am still standing. That I am not a woman who disappears when she is no longer useful. That I am still here, still myself, with cream cheese frosting in my refrigerator and a window that is finally open. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, and if any part of this felt familiar, if you recognize something in your own life, your own family, your own kitchen table at 8 in the morning holding a cup of coffee that's going cold, know that you are not alone. And know that it is never too late to open the window. I've thought a lot about what I would do differently. Not in a punishing way. I'm past punishing myself, but in the honest, clear-eyed way that only comes after the dust has settled and you finally have enough quiet to think straight. What I know now is this. What happened between me and my son didn't happen because he is a bad person. It happened because I created conditions that made it easy for him to become someone neither of us would have recognized 20 years ago. That's the part that took me the longest to sit with, the part that is hardest to say out loud. I didn't just enable him, I built a whole system. I laid every plank of it, quietly and lovingly and with the best intentions in the world. And then I stood back and watched it become something I no longer recognized and told myself it was fine. It was not fine. There is a version of generosity that is actually a form of control. I didn't see that for a long time. I told myself I was giving freely, that there were no strings attached. But there were strings. I just couldn't see them because I was the one holding them. And they were made of things like hope and longing and the particular fear that comes with losing a husband and not wanting to lose anyone else. I gave money because money was something I could give. What I actually wanted, what I never found a way to ask for, was to matter, to be present, to be someone whose birthday was marked on a calendar in pen, not forgotten until 9 o'clock at night. What I've come to understand is that when you outsource your need for connection to your checkbook, you teach the people you love to meet you there and nowhere else. My son is learning something new now. So is his wife, Natalie. So, honestly, am I. We are all three of us in the middle of learning what it looks like to be in relationship without a financial transaction at the center of it. Some days that is easier than others. Some days I feel the old pull, the urge to offer, to solve, to buy my way back into the room. I notice it now. I don't always act on it. The granddaughter who drew me as a stick figure in front of a lopsided house, she's watching all of this, even when we don't think she is. Children always are. And what I want her to learn from her grandmother is not that money is how love is measured. I want her to learn that love is something you show up for. That showing up costs nothing and means everything. That a woman can be taken for granted for years and still find her footing. Still find her voice. Still stand in her own doorway and decide who she lets in and on what terms. That is the only inheritance I am certain I want to leave. Not the accounts, not the trust, not the colonial with the hardwood floors that I paid for and whose address I have never once been invited to call home. I want to leave the example of a woman who finally, past 65, learned to say, I am worth more than what I can give you. And meant it. It is never too late for that. That is the one thing I am absolutely sure of.